For the Sake of Calmness is the latest film by Newsha Tavakolian, a visual artist and photographer. She was the principal laureate of the 2015 Prince Claus Award and was part of the jury of the Hivos Tiger Awards competition in 2017. For the Sake of Calmness, which has its world premiere at IFFR, is her first time participating in the festival with a film. Beekman is an Amsterdam-based film journalist who writes for the Dutch national newspaper De Volkskrant. In 2013, he won the Louis Hardloper Award for the best film publication.
Although you started out working as a news photographer and you covered many of the world conflict areas, you also developed at the same time, or a bit later in your career, a more artistic body of work. And for this work, you also experience with minimal movement. But this is actually your first real short, For the Sake of Calmness. So my first question would be, what led you to this film, to this short?
Yeah, thank you, Bor, for your question. So yes, I started as a photojournalist when I was 16, and I was covering war, disasters, and going around the world and capturing people's difficulties, and also working in my home country, Iran. But for this project, 4 years ago, when I have started to thinking about this project, which was based on PMS, it's a syndrome where many women, they suffer a week before they're getting their period. And unfortunately, I'm one of them. Unfortunately, or fortunately, because also it has many good sides in it. And I start thinking how I can visualize this something which is so abstract and it's just a feeling, it's emotion. And I really worked on it for 4 years. And at first it was a set of images. I was going around Iran and I was doing landscape and portrait of people. But after some times I thought I need to do a short film about this, because only with photos I cannot bring across that mindset, that state of mind where I was experiencing every month. So,
and I'd say it's quite a dark and poetic and haunting film, and the people in the film seem stuck or frozen, almost like statues, but still alive. They are sweating, staring, contemplating. Could you put in language what they convey to you, the people you see in the film?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. You know, some years ago, I read somewhere that the difference between sculpture and photo, I was reading about differences between sculpture and photography. And in that article, the writer was saying, in order to get rid of sculpture, you have to break it. And but in photography, there's always hope for next frame. So photography is more hopeful than sculpture. And for this film, I wanted to combine these two medium kind of. I wanted these people to be, to be figures that they look like a sculpture, but also I wanted to bring the next frame. And that's how I didn't want to be so absolute. I wanted to mix being in a concrete position and also in a fluid situation. So I wanted to mix these two.
And could you explain a bit why you chose this concrete world? It's been part of your photography before. These buildings that are, well, not yet finished, abandoned. What attracts you in them?
I really like concrete buildings. It might be because I live in one of them. and it's a common space where everybody share the same space. And every day you meet different people and you take the same journey with each other in an elevator, but yet our lives could be very different from each other. And it could also be because these buildings has no specific architectural nuance. It is far less significant than the people who live in it. And I have to say, like, unconsciously, always these buildings, they end up being shown at my personal project because I live in one of them. And of course, it's something that I did Project Look, for example, in 2012 until 2013. I portrait my neighbors where they live in the same building as me. But in the background, we all share these concrete buildings that is a view of our house, but yet we all have different lives.
And we also see both your parents in this film. Now, your family has been part of your photography, but was it a choice you made from the start to put both your parents in this film, your short?
Yeah. This came just like some days before I started shooting, the idea of taking, also filming my parents. I don't know why that happened. I have no idea, but I think I follow my gut, and suddenly I felt that I have to shoot my parents next to each other. And the thing is that when I shot my father, where my parents, they're both sweating and they're blinking very slowly, that scene, it became the last time that I saw my father, because after that I left Iran, and then my father had a heart attack and I could never see him again. So that scene is very important part of my film. And another thing is that, before I started this project PMS, I had to do research, of course, to understand it much more, because it's a syndrome where many women they are dealing with, but unfortunately in a world of research, they didn't take this syndrome seriously. And it took many years, and many women, they suffered, because it's just a period of 3 to 5 days that you feel this way. But many doctors, they give depression pills to women. So many women, they think the world is ending, they are depressed, but that's not what is happening. I mean, if you become, creative during those days, if you do something with those emotions that you're experiencing, then you see the result, because it's also in many articles, and also from my experience, my personal experience, you become very creative and you become very sensitive. There's no filter between you and the world. You get sixth senses. And, in Middle Ages, women who had these syndromes, they were calling them witches, and in some countries, let's say Portugal, one of them, they would burn women. And of course, but now, because many women and many people, they're talking about this syndrome, of course, it's more understandable to work with those emotions during those days. And I said all of this to come to this point that, yes, I had sixth sense, and I felt that I have to film my parents, and I had no idea. And in the scene where you see my mother, she's in a state of grieving because she's sitting on her kitchen table and the clock is ticking and she's kind of like freezing, but the time is passing by. It shows her loneliness. And the next frame, she's sitting next to my father and they're surrounded both by lots of family images, family photos and memories. And yes, that's the story.
It's almost as if your father has already left or is busy departing.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And Newsha, you are no stranger to the Rotterdam Film Festival, having been a Tiger jury member yourself in 2017. Well, could you share a bit about that experience? What was that like?
So it was first time that I served as a jury member at a film festival, and I was very excited about it. It was very special because I was not just a viewer, and I had to also tune in and use all my senses to consider different aspects of the films. I got to discuss the films with other jury members, and since I think in terms of visual language, I was more focusing on the visual language, but it was very inspiring to see the other jury members that they were all also directors and filmmakers, how they were talking about the narrative and they would give attention to the narrative of the film. So it was very inspiring for me and I learned a lot.
And this film was it has its international premiere at IFFR this year, but it also premiered in Tehran. How important is that Iranian audience to you?
Yeah, the Iranian audience, I think it's very important for my work, and it always have been, because they speak the same language, they know the culture, and I think the feedbacks that I get from the Iranian audience, it's very important to me and my work. So that's why I always show my work first in Iran, and after Iran, if it goes to other countries and find a place in other shows, I'll be more than happy. But here is the most important for me to show my work.
And what was the response? The first response? I can understand it. The theme or the subject of your film, BMS, well, it's not quite common in Western cinema, I'd say, but it's probably the same in Iran as well. I'm not sure if there are any films about this syndrome that you remember, or so I wonder what was the response to your film.
But actually, you know, because of the research I was doing, I mean, of course, I don't know about the cinema of all around the world, but I was researching and I was doing a study to see who did a project about PMS. And unfortunately, not many people. I could only find some research. I mean, yes, there are films about menstruation and, you know, periods and this kind of, I mean, this topic, but not PMS. And in Iran is also the same. And, you know, these things are not that is taboo, but normally people, they don't talk about it. Nobody talks about PMS here. Nobody really at work consider these periods of time where women emotionally, they become super sensitive to light, to smell, to senses. They don't consider this, you know, and they don't think about it. So for me, it was really important to visualize this, that also in Iran, people start talking about it and thinking about it. And the response to it, it was a bit, I mean, because it's a female syndrome, I didn't want at first to say it's about PMS. So when I started the show here, I left the viewers with no explanation. So they could only come in and see the film and leave. And they were all like, what is this? What we just saw? So, And after 2 weeks, I took my Instagram and I explained what the film is about. And then I got response. I mean, it, of course, also we have to take this to consideration that I showed my work during the pandemic. So many people, they afraid of going to closed spaces with others, but we made the distance measured, and only a couple of people could go in and to see the installation and the film. And I mean, in 1 month and a half, we got around 1,500 viewers. So it was quite a lot of people to going and see the show in the pandemic.
Yeah, and this being your first short, could you foresee yourself working within a longer time frame, say a feature, yeah, or perhaps something with a more or longer narrative structure? Is that something you plan?
When my father passed away, before that I was in Romania for almost, I was working in Romania for almost, in total for 2 months. I was traveling around Romania, and it was really interesting. When I went to Romania on assignment, I was driving around in Romania, and it was such an interesting experience because I saw a different version of Iran. For me, it was as if I'm I'm flying to the future of Iran. I felt that we shared the same emotion and the melancholy and the doubts, and so many similarity between Iranians and Romanians, yet they have nothing in common. And that made me think a lot. And when my father passed away, I came back to Iran and I could not work for 1 year. So during the 1 year that I was not able to travel around and do assignments and travel, I decided to to write a script with a friend. So the idea was mine. It was about, it's a story that it happens in Iran and Romania. And we wrote this script, and of course my friend who's a writer wrote it, and then the pandemic happened and I could not do anything with it. And hopefully when world is more calmer, I start going after that script. And yes, it's my wish to make that film. It's a feature film.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, if I might add one more connection between Romania and Iran, both countries share a remarkable cinematic tradition. Yeah, there are some comparisons to be made, but if I may ask you about this visual tradition in Iran, or because it seems for some reason that the Iranian people have some sort of a cinematic bone. It's just there. You seem so well equipped in this visual language. Do you have any? Is there any specific reason you might an explanation you want to share? Why are you so good at cinema over there in Iran?
Yeah. I have to explain this first, I think. I mean, our language, the language that Iranians used to express themselves was poetry. And that's, poetry is deep-rooted to Iranian culture. We have 1001 Nights, from Ferdowsi, Shahnameh, and we have Taziyeh, is a ritual performance during Muharram. And these are all deep-rooted to our culture. But of course, being said that our language is poetry, over years, that language changed a bit, because of access of that people got to cameras, being photo cameras or cameras that you could shoot. So it became much more accessible and more democratic kind of. We should not forget the love for cinema for Iranians. And Iranians are storytellers, and they love to tell stories. And in the past, in ancient time, it was poetry. Now it's photography. You don't know how many amazing photographers we have, and also directors, filmmakers, and young ones, and who were inspired by the older generation. So I think, this storytelling is deep-rooted in our culture, as I mentioned.
Yes, and this year, as was mentioned before, you started at a very young age working as a photographer, 60 years old. By then, one of the very few women photographers in Iran, certainly the youngest. So we are a quarter century further on. The birth of your short also marks the 25th year in your career, and your birth as a filmmaker, one might say. Does it seem to you as a natural moment for you? Does this film, to a degree, sums up your thoughts and knowledge and ideas that you collected throughout your life so far?
I mean, I think, yes, you could say that it is first time that in my work I got personal. In one hand, this subject is a product of my PMSy brain and intuition, and in other hand, I think it's a collection of experiences that I got through my life and working for decades. And yes, I think they're absolutely related, and you cannot distinguish this with each other. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time, Newsha. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in real life, and and I'm looking forward to that feature. Yeah.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you very much for your short and for your time.